Look
Your
at these
brain was
food
not built for
options.
wealth.
A
It was built
balanced
for
choice
survival. And
and
those two things are
financial
not the
reward.
same. Hey, I'm Astrid, and today I'm going to teach you something that most financial advice completely ignores: the reason why knowing what to do with money and actually doing it are two completely different problems. Because the gap between those two things isn't laziness. It isn't discipline. It's biology. We're going to cover how your brain processes money, why it consistently pushes you toward decisions that feel right but cost you long term, and what understanding this actually changes about the way you save, spend, invest, and think about your financial future. Give me 15 minutes, and the way you think about your own financial decisions will never be quite the same. And just to be clear up front, nothing here is financial advice. Every person's situation is different. What I'm giving you today is the framework. To understand the psychology of money, you need to understand one foundational idea first. Your brain has two operating systems. Not literally, but functionally, this is the most useful way to think about it. The first system is fast, automatic, emotional. It makes decisions in milliseconds based on pattern recognition, emotion, and instinct. It kept your ancestors alive when a predator appeared. It still runs most of your daily decisions today, including most of your financial ones, without you realizing it. The second system is slow, deliberate, rational. It can calculate compound interest, compare mortgage rates, and build a retirement projection. It's the system you think you're using when you make financial decisions. It's also exhausting to run, and your brain avoids it whenever possible. Here's the problem. Almost everything about modern financial life, credit cards, one-click purchasing, buy now, pay later, stock market apps with real-time notifications, is designed to trigger the fast system. The emotional one. The one that was built for immediate survival, not long-term wealth. You're not bad with money. You're running ancient hardware in a modern financial environment. And nobody told you. Let's go through the specific ways your brain works against your financial interests, and why understanding each one changes how you make decisions going forward. Loss aversion. In the 1970s, psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky discovered something that changed the field of economics permanently. Losses feel approximately twice as powerful as equivalent gains. What this means in practice: losing $100 feels roughly twice as bad as gaining $100 feels good. The pain of loss is not symmetrical with the pleasure of gain. This sounds like a psychological curiosity. The financial implications are enormous. Loss aversion is why people hold onto losing investments far longer than they should. Selling would mean making the loss real. As long as you haven't sold, you haven't officially lost. This is not rational. The loss already exists in the form of a lower portfolio value. But the brain doesn't process paper losses the same way it processes realized ones. Loss aversion is why people avoid investing in the stock market after seeing it drop, even when historically, downturns have been followed by recoveries, and the mathematically optimal time to invest is often when others are fearful. The brain registers the recent loss as a threat and generates a strong signal to avoid. Loss aversion is why subscription services are structured the way they are. A free trial that requires a credit card doesn't just give you access, it creates a future loss if you cancel. Keeping the subscription feels like avoiding a loss. Canceling feels like losing something you had. The framing changes the decision. Once you see loss aversion operating in your financial life, you see it everywhere. Present bias. Your brain systematically overvalues things available right now compared to things available in the future, even when the future option is objectively more valuable. This is present bias. And it's one of the most financially destructive tendencies a human brain has. The classic demonstration: would you rather have $50 today or $100 in 1 year? Most people, when asked this question honestly, feel a strong pull toward the $50, even though $100 in 1 year represents a 100% return, something no investment reliably offers. The future reward is discounted simply because it's in the future. Now apply this to retirement savings. The benefit of contributing to a retirement account today is real, mathematically significant, and will compound for decades. But it's abstract, distant, and invisible. The cost is immediate and concrete: $200 less in your paycheck this month. To the fast system, the immediate cost feels more real than the distant benefit, even when the distant benefit is objectively larger by a factor of 10 or 20. Present bias is why people consistently spend more than they intend to. The pleasure of a purchase is immediate. The financial consequence, the credit card bill, the depleted savings, the retirement account that didn't grow, arrives later. By the time the consequence shows up, the brain has already filed the transaction as resolved. Present bias is why "I'll start saving next month" is one of the most financially expensive sentences a person can say. Next month, it becomes next month again. The future self is always abstract. The present self always has immediate needs. Understanding present bias doesn't automatically eliminate it, but it changes how you set up your financial systems. Automatic transfers to savings and investment accounts work specifically because they remove the present bias decision entirely. The money moves before you can weigh the immediate cost against the abstract future benefit. The decision is made once, in a moment of deliberate thinking, and then removed from the emotional decision process permanently. The pain of paying. Every time you spend money, your brain registers something that researchers call the pain of paying. It's a mild but measurable form of discomfort associated with parting with money. It's why paying cash for something feels more significant than swiping a card. The physical act of handing over bills makes the transaction more real, more concrete, more felt. This has been measured in brain imaging studies. When people pay with cash, the regions of the brain associated with physical pain show more activation than when they pay with cards. Credit cards, contactless payment, and digital wallets are not just convenient. They reduce the pain of paying. They make transactions feel less real. And when spending feels less real, people spend more. The financial services industry understands this extraordinarily well. The progression from cash to cards to contactless to one-click online purchasing to auto-renewal subscriptions is a systematic reduction of friction at every stage of a transaction. Each step reduces the felt cost of spending. Each step increases the likelihood that spending happens. This doesn't make these technologies malicious, but understanding the mechanism changes your relationship with it. Deliberately choosing to pay with cash for categories where you overspend isn't nostalgic. It's a behavioral intervention that leverages the pain of paying to build natural friction into your spending. Mental accounting. Your brain doesn't treat all money as equivalent. It creates separate mental accounts, categories, and applies different rules to money depending on which category it belongs to. Money received as a tax refund feels different from money earned through regular income, even though it's the same currency with the same purchasing power. People spend tax refunds more freely than earned income because the brain categorizes it as a windfall, unexpected, extra, not part of the normal budget. Money won gambling feels different from money earned working. People are significantly more willing to take financial risks with gambling winnings than with earned income, a phenomenon called the house money effect. The rational view is that $100 is $100 regardless of where it came from. The brain doesn't operate that way. Mental accounting also explains why people simultaneously carry credit card debt at 22% interest while maintaining a savings account earning 3%. Rationally, the savings should be used to pay down the debt. The net return is a guaranteed 19%. Emotionally, the savings account feels like security. The credit card debt lives in a different mental account. Touching the savings account feels like a loss. Paying the minimum on the card feels manageable. The two accounts never get compared directly. They're filed in different mental categories and evaluated with different emotional rules. The result is paying thousands of dollars in unnecessary interest while maintaining the psychological comfort of a savings balance. The hedonic treadmill. One of the most studied phenomena in the psychology of well-being is hedonic adaptation, the tendency for humans to return to a relatively stable level of happiness despite major positive or negative life changes. You get a raise. You feel better. Then you adjust. The new salary becomes normal. The baseline shifts upward. Within months, sometimes weeks, the financial satisfaction from the raise has largely dissipated. You feel the same as before, but now your spending has increased to match the new income, and you need another raise to feel better again. This is the hedonic treadmill. You run harder and faster, your position relative to the baseline barely changes, and the things you were certain would make you feel financially secure, a bigger salary, a nicer apartment, a newer car, deliver a shorter and shorter period of satisfaction each time. The treadmill isn't a moral failure. It's a biological mechanism. Your brain is calibrated for relative change, not absolute levels. The first time you earn $5,000 in a month feels extraordinary. The 20th time, it's normal. The brain has adapted. Understanding the treadmill changes the financial questions worth asking. The question isn't just, how do I earn more? It's, how do I build financial security and satisfaction that doesn't require continuously escalating income to maintain? That's a different question. And it leads to different decisions about how to structure spending, saving, and what you're actually optimizing for. Social comparison. Humans are intensely social animals. For most of our evolutionary history, social standing directly affected survival. Being perceived as having fewer resources than your peers could mean exclusion from the group, and exclusion from the group in a pre-agricultural environment was genuinely dangerous. That ancient social comparison circuitry is still running. And in a modern environment of curated social media highlight reels, visible consumption signals, and constant exposure to the lifestyles of people wealthier than us, it runs constantly. Research consistently shows that people's financial satisfaction is heavily influenced not by their absolute financial position, but by their position relative to their reference group, the people they compare themselves to. A person earning $80,000 per year, surrounded by people earning $60,000, often reports higher financial satisfaction than a person earning $100,000, surrounded by people earning $130,000. The absolute number matters less than the relative position. This mechanism drives an enormous amount of spending that has very little to do with personal preference and almost everything to do with social signaling. The car that's slightly nicer than your neighbor's. The neighborhood that's a step up from where you grew up. The vacation that photographs well. None of these are irrational in isolation. But when the spending is driven primarily by social comparison rather than genuine personal value, it creates a cycle where the spending never actually resolves the underlying feeling, because the reference group adjusts upward as your spending increases. The financially sophisticated version of this insight isn't to stop caring about social perception entirely. That's not realistic and not what the research suggests is optimal. It's to be deliberate about your reference group, to recognize when social comparison is driving a spending decision, and to build a personal definition of financial success that isn't entirely externally calibrated. Overconfidence. Study after study across multiple countries and decades shows that most people significantly overestimate their financial knowledge, their ability to predict market movements, their capacity to time investments, and their likelihood of achieving financial goals. The average investor significantly underperforms the average market index not because of bad luck, but because of overconfident decisions, believing they can identify when to buy and sell, believing they can pick the superior investments, believing their intuition about market direction is more reliable than it actually is. This doesn't mean investment knowledge is worthless. It means that calibrated confidence, accurately assessing what you know and don't know, is itself a financial skill. The investor who recognizes the limits of their own prediction ability and invests accordingly in low-cost diversified index funds often outperforms the investor who trades actively on confident predictions, not because the passive investor is smarter, but because they've accurately assessed their own limitations. Overconfidence also shows up in financial planning. People consistently underestimate how long major purchases will take to pay off, how much they'll spend on irregular expenses, and how long it will take to reach savings goals. This optimism bias isn't vanity, it's a documented feature of human cognition. But it means that financial plans built on best-case assumptions consistently underperform plans built on realistic or slightly conservative ones. Here's what makes all of this simultaneously frustrating and freeing. None of these tendencies are flaws in your character. They are features of human cognition that served important evolutionary purposes. Loss aversion kept your ancestors from taking risks that could end their lives. Present bias prioritized immediate survival over abstract future planning. Social comparison maintained group cohesion. Overconfidence supported decisive action in uncertain environments. These were not mistakes. They were adaptations. They're running in a financial environment they were never designed for, and that mismatch is responsible for an enormous portion of the financial difficulty most people experience. The conventional financial advice framework, spend less than you earn, invest the difference, be patient, is not wrong. But it treats financial behavior as primarily a knowledge problem. If people just knew the right things to do, they would do them. The psychology of money suggests something more complicated and more useful. Financial behavior is primarily a systems problem. The knowledge matters, but the environment you build around yourself, the automatic transfers, the account structures, the friction you introduce or remove, matters more than most people realize. You don't feel the gap between what you know and what you do until you build a system that closes it. So here's the framework for applying all of this practically, knowing that your specific situation, psychology, and goals change everything. Loss aversion is working against you when you hold losing investments hoping to avoid realizing the loss, or when you avoid investing because recent market performance was negative. Recognizing it doesn't eliminate it, but it gives you a pause between the emotional signal and the decision. Present bias is working against you every time you delay a savings or investment decision because the current cost feels more real than the future benefit. The most effective counter isn't willpower, it's automation. Remove the present bias decision by making the good financial choice the default, not the effortful option. The pain of paying is something the financial industry actively reduces. You can deliberately reintroduce it in categories where you overspend. Cash for discretionary spending, a deliberate waiting period before large purchases, anything that makes the transaction feel more real before it happens. Mental accounting is working against you when you maintain low-interest savings while carrying high-interest debt, or when you treat windfall money as different from earned income. A dollar is a dollar. Where it came from doesn't change what it can do. The hedonic treadmill isn't something you escape. But understanding it changes what you optimize for sustainability and genuine satisfaction over the next purchase that will feel extraordinary until it doesn't. Social comparison is most dangerous when you're not aware it's happening. When a spending decision is driven more by how it will be perceived than by how much value it will actually deliver to your life, that's worth noticing. And overconfidence is most expensive in markets. Humility about the limits of your own predictionability isn't a weakness. It's one of the most practically valuable things an investor can develop. Your brain is not your enemy, but it is running software that was written for a different world. Understanding the code doesn't rewrite it, but it gives you something your brain didn't come with by default. A moment between the impulse and the decision. That moment is worth more than most people realize. See you in the next video, amigos, and comment what is your though about this. Bye-bye.